Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast, Season 3. Chad Himes here, joined again by my friend Bob Stewart. Bob, how are you today?
Chad, I'm pretty excited. You know this. I watched a bunch of beatbox videos last night.
Yes.
And if you guys this is a total sidebar. We're going to talk about living paycheck to paycheck here in a second, but beatboxers are some of the most talented individuals like in the world. Go watch a beatbox video. D-Lo's the guy's name. Unbelievable. My kid is into these things. Sorry.
So Google D-Lo beatbox. Check it out.
Yeah.
All right.
And you're welcome.
All right. Now, Bob, this is the kind of stuff that you text us in our Win, Make, Give texting group.
I do.
That we get. Yet you also texted us something the other night that I was like, my jaw dropped when I actually got it from you and said, is this true? And if it is, we need to do an episode on this. What was it that you found, Bob?
I'll read you the headline here. So I use a news app called Smart News. Ben and I use that. You might use it too, Chad. But it basically, it kind of starts to learn the type of news that you like and then serves you up similar news. And we're constantly looking at financial stuff and investment stuff. And so I got served this article up the other day. And the headline is one of those stop you in your tracks headlines, which I think today all headlines are designed to do that. That's the purpose of a headline. But the headline was, wealthier Americans making $250,000 or more are beginning to live paycheck to paycheck. And like that just stopped me in my tracks. I didn't even read the article before I sent it to you guys. I think originally I sent a screenshot of the article and then I'm like, they need to read this. And so then I sent you the link. But
yeah, we're going to break that one down here, right? I mean, that's unbelievable. And we're not saying it. This might be you, right? You might be out there and you might be saying, I'm making $200,000 to $250,000 a year, and I feel like I'm living paycheck to paycheck. So, Bob, you're going to share with us some statistics that you pulled from that article, and then we're going to talk about some of the key reasons we believe and what you can do about it. People are living paycheck to paycheck at any price point.
Chad, these are things that I think these are your themes all throughout Win, Make, Give, especially inside of the Wealth series. And, in some ways, a little promo for the later in season 3, we're going to relaunch the Wealth series. And it's needed, right? And we can tell in some of these statistics that it's needed because sometimes even when we're making a really good living, we are not, we're not out of the rat race, right? We're just continuing each month. We have to come back to work because we spent all the money we made the month before. But so a couple statistics out of there. So this was the headline of the article came from a recent study by payments.com and Lending Club, which found that 61% of all Americans live paycheck to paycheck in April of 2022, Chad. And that is up from 52% in April of 2021. So only 1 year later, 9% more Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. You know what's kind of crazy about that statistic is it almost matches with inflation. Inflation's at about 8%. So if you think about last year, a bunch of that 9% of people that this year live in paycheck to paycheck that weren't last year were probably only saving somewhere around 8% of their income,
maybe,
right? And now that inflation has taken that out, they're now at a spot where they're not saving anything. They're basically spending all of the money that they make each month.
Yeah, that's amazing. But that's if we just round off some numbers, that's 2 out of every 3 Americans are basically living paycheck to paycheck as of April of this year.
Yeah.
So that's amazing.
Here's maybe even more shocking.
36%
of the people earning $250,000 or more annually are living paycheck to paycheck. So 2 in 3 Americans live paycheck to paycheck just in general, but 1 in 3 Americans making $250,000 or more are also living paycheck to paycheck.
Amazing.
As the same thing holds true in the $200,000 to $250,000 bracket.
So right? 1 out of every 3 of people making over $200,000 basically is living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, and then one other thing that I kind of dug out of there, Chad, that I think is interesting because it gets to a lot of, look, I think in that of all of those people living paycheck to paycheck. 40% of them were doing it without difficulties paying their bills. And my guess is it's those people in those little bit higher brackets, right? Like if you're making $50,000 a year living paycheck to paycheck, it's going to be a heck of a lot harder doing it without difficulties, right? But the idea here was 40% of those people, they don't have any difficulties in their lives. They're basically overspending is what they're doing. And we're going to talk about some of the ways that kind of materializes.
All right. So Bob, what do you think? Let's cover some of what's reason number 1 that we believe people are finding themselves going paycheck to paycheck?
They don't have a budget, Chad.
Well, there you go.
They don't have a budget. Couple facets. So pennyhoarder.com did a study recently that found that 55% of Americans don't use a budget. It doesn't surprise me that 62% are living paycheck to paycheck and 55% don't have a budget, right? Yep. It's probably a massive amount of overlap in those two statistics.
Of course.
Additionally, 56%, which this makes a ton of sense, of Americans said they didn't know how much money they spent last month.
All right. Now, the difference, remember, folks, budget is going in where the money's supposed to go. Basically, what we're saying is 56% don't do the P&L piece of it, which is knowing where the money went. And heck, they don't even need to do an official P&L. They just need to know where their money went.
Yeah, but it's probably the same people. Like, it's highly likely that the 56% that don't know what they spent last month are the same ones that never intended to know.
Do you know what I would be interested, Bob? I'd be interested in this study to go a little bit deeper. Because if 55% of Americans say they don't use a budget, I'm doing the quick math, that means 45% of Americans say they do use a budget. Yet I want to know, of the 45% that do use a budget, what percentage of them actually follow their budget, right? Because I know there have been months we use a budget. We sit down at the beginning of the year. We budget out the year. We budget each month. We look at the month when the month's going to start. Yet I know there are things that come up. And sometimes I'll say to Nita, no, I need that, right? And it wasn't in the budget, right? Or Nita will say, no, I need that. And it wasn't in the budget. Or this is a great time to buy that. Or something's happened in our world. We need a refrigerator that blew up. We weren't planning, whatever. I wonder how many of the people that do budget still don't follow their budget even though they have it.
Yeah, it's probably a number we could dig up, and I bet it's relatively high.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. So those of you listening, you'll hear it again in the Wealth series. You've heard us talk about it before. You've got to have a budget, and you have to sit down and plan where the money's going to go. I'll tell you, Bob, I don't know how you guys do it, so I want to hear how you guys do it. We get together, Nita and I, we go out for dinner on the 26th, 27th, 28th of every month. Somewhere in there, depending how the week falls, we'll go out for dinner or lunch, and we'll sit down and do our budget at the restaurant. That way, one, we don't get into a yelling, screaming match because we're in public, okay? Two, by the 26th, 27th of the month, we can anticipate what we should be expecting income and outgoing. And then we also get to write off the meal because it was a business meal, of course, because we're doing that. How does budgeting work around your household?
Very, very similar, Chad. So we will do it. We tend to do it the last Sunday. Aaron and I will put the boys to bed last Sunday of the month. And really, what we're doing when we show up there is we have the budget we used the month before, and we're just looking at what things do we think are significant changes in this thing, right? Like, we're gonna, this summer she's got an Airbnb booked, right? And so it's like, well, when we show up to do July's, we got to budget in that little vacation that we'll be taking, right? And that's something different from the month of June. But and in that same day, we look back at this month, right? Was there any dramatic expenses that were a massive deviation from what we'd planned for last month? And look, we don't hit our budget. In fact, we never hit our budget. No. Like, we never get right on the number of dollars we meant to spend, Correct. Right? Sometimes we're a little bit over, sometimes we're a little bit under the budget, but it's very rare today, all these years later, finally in my life, that we're spending, dramatically outside of that budget.
Right. And that's why we track it annually so that we can look back and say, oh yeah, in February, we spent more because we forgot about this, yet we compensated in March and April. So we're kind of back on budget, even though month to month, you might make a mistake or slip up as you're going.
Yeah.
All right. So Bob, most of those people don't have a budget. They're not planning where their money went, should go, etc. What about another reason that might be justifying for why they're going paycheck to paycheck?
Well, this was probably, for me personally, through much of my earning career, this was one of my largest problems.
Yep.
We spend impulsively.
Mm-hmm.
And Chad, it's funny, if you go and Google like impulsive spending and ways to curb it, or just a lot of the results you get when you Google impulsive spending are designed to show people how to get you to spend impulsively, right? There's all these articles about like in a supermarket, how do you get people to spend impulsively? On your website, how do you get people to spend impulsively? So there's like a whole culture in America, right, about getting us to spend impulsively. But what I found in doing some of the research, so there's A recent study done by Slick Deals, which is kind of this like online shopping platform. Think of like a Shopify type of but in January of 2020, so this was before the pandemic, the average American was spending $155 a month on impulsive buys. Things that they never meant to buy the day they woke up. Like I wake up that day, I had no intention of buying the People magazine at the checkout counter at Safeway, but I bought it.
Right.
$155 a month. By the way, through the pandemic, 2 years later, right, this April, they did the poll, 18% increase. We're now spending on average $182 a month on impulse spending.
Wow. That's probably some of the, hey, we're trapped in our house, so I'm going to buy things. Click, click. It makes me feel good, right? It's that instant gratification feeling. I mean, think about one of the big things that eBay came out with that Amazon then stole, which was the one-click buy now. Right? It was just click. So, Bob, give me 2 or 3 tips on how you can help me and others curb spending impulsively. I'll give you one that comes to log out of Amazon. Because then even though you can look at Amazon, yet when you're going to buy it, you have to log in, remember what the heck your password was, or go look up your It's just doing that 30-second roadblock that maybe the dopamine hits and you don't have to actually click purchase.
Here, this might sound silly, but I swear to you guys, this has saved me multiple times at 10 o'clock at night when I'm too lazy to go up and find my wallet.
Okay.
I do not have my credit card number memorized.
There you go.
My wife has her credit card number memorized. And so whenever she's on there, like, she doesn't need the credit card. Like, she literally knows the number. She'll bang it in there.
Really?
Yeah, she has got it memorized. I don't have ours memorized. On purpose. I used to. At a time in the past, I knew my credit card number. I purposely don't remember it because I sometimes I'm sitting there at 10 o'clock and I'm like, I want this. And I'm like, but where's my wallet at? Dang it. And you know what? This is ridiculous, but if it has PayPal as a checkout option, sometimes that gets me because I'm like, ooh, I got PayPal. And I just click the button and then my bank account's tied to PayPal.
You don't even
and
see
it was an impulse buy. I don't need that 700th hat, Chad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have a collection.
You're right. I do need that hat.
Yeah.
But I don't need the rice cooker, right? The rice cooks just fine in the pot.
Yes. Right. So you're right. So there's some ways to do it. Another way, folks.
Here's another one.
Carry bigger bills. If you're going to carry cash, carry bigger bills because you're a lot less likely to break that 50 to buy that People magazine at the counter or something like that than you are to, hand over a 5 or a 10, which would cover it.
There's a lot of ways here. I think there's the old envelope trick, right? Where it's like I put how much money into the envelope that I'm going to take to the grocery store when I go to do my groceries, and then I don't have an extra $5 to grab the cinnamon rolls. That's my weakness at the grocery store. Like if there's a box of cinnamon rolls around, like I'm taking them down. Here's another one that saved me a lot. I got on almost every platform that I would ever consider buying something from, Chad, there's something sitting in my inbox or in my cart right now. I very rarely, unless it's like a pair of limited edition shoes where you got to get them that day in those first 3 minutes or they're sold out forever. I very rarely buy something the day that I wanted it.
We have that policy in our house that it has to sit in the cart for 24 hours. Unless it's a limited edition something, and neither Nita or I are buying limited edition stuff. But it's has to sit in the cart for 24 hours so that you overcome that. I teach a lot of people when I'm coaching, pick one day a week that's your Amazon day. Which means on Friday, you can buy everything that's in your cart, but you have to have added it over the week and you just wait. And
I'll show you right now. Like this is like real deal. This is my shopping bag on New Era. I love hats. Like I'm always buying hats. I got 3 hats in my shopping bag right now. I got a couple of Mariners hats, a Pittsburgh Pirates hat, which has the P on it for place, right? It's probable actually that if I hit refresh right here, I'm like, hey, refresh my shopping bag. I bet one of these is sold now. And so it'll be like the internet will just take care of it for me, right? They'll be like, sorry, you left it in here too long. Everybody, this is sold out now. You can't buy it. That saved me hundreds of dollars this year already.
Yeah, filter your emails. That's another thing you could do, folks. I don't know how many times I put something in my cart, like I'm getting ready to do a Spartan race or something, and I'll go to the website and check. They're masters at emailing me saying, hey, you're already one step closer. Come on back and click it. Hey, here's a coupon for 10% if you want to click it today. Right? Filter the emails from those organizations so you're not even seeing them sometimes. That'll help you on those impulse buys that they're doing their job, which is sell you something.
And they do it really well. And if you go online, there's classes teaching them how to get you to buy the thing impulsively. Right?
All right. So you got to avoid the impulse buy. What else, Bob? What was another thing you found?
I mean, look, this is one that definitely did this throughout a lot of time, gotten way better at this, continue to do this in some areas of my life today.
Okay.
But it's keeping up with the Joneses.
Oh, that Joneses family.
Right? And Chad, the real idea here is how do we live below our means?
Yes.
You know, we hear all the time living within our means, which to me means not spending more than I make, but not necessarily saving a bunch of it. I'm just kind of living within what I make. But how do you live below your means? And I think for a lot of us, I think if you were to look at the arc of like your earning career, right? Let's say starting at 18 for some of us, maybe even earlier, maybe starting as we got out of college, right? In our early 20s. We had a certain lifestyle then that we've continually upgraded to the point where we're at today.
Yes. And it matches our income.
Our income.
Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely matches our income. Now, some of us even get silly in our 20s and get ahead of our income and get big credit card debt because we want to drive the cool BMW, right? Because the lady at work who does the job we did, but she's been doing it for 10 years, she drives the BMW, and I gotta look like her, and I gotta drive the car that she drives.
Yep.
There's a few places here when I still fall into this trap.
So tell me one. Where are you keeping up with the Joneses still, Bob?
My clothes. Like it's one of those things where over time I've just upgraded how much I'm willing to spend on a pair of jeans, for example.
Really?
Like in college.
I just figure half your wardrobe was, taken out of the Ben Kinney wardrobe closet
my tops.
here.
My tops are all Brivity Place, those
now
kind
we
of
need
things.
Ben to start printing jeans.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I would wear, Levi's or, I'm trying to think what even some of the top end. Tommy Hilfiger jeans, right? Which back then were, let's say, $100.
Sure.
Right? And then at some point, late 20s, early 30s, I'm making, more money. Now I'm buying 7 jeans. And my
are they
jeans
expensive? I don't know.
Yeah, they're $220 bucks.
No, goodness.
A pair.
I shop at the Gap
right?
for my
and
jeans.
now
Bob.
I got this one brand. I love the brand. Doesn't matter what brand it is, but they're $300 a pair. And
it matters what brand it is. That's why you didn't tell us what brand it was.
Listen, I would swear to you that the $300 jeans are better than the $100 jeans. They're not, by the way.
Right.
In my head, they're more comfy. In my head, they fit me better. But the reality is, I've let myself upgrade that portion of my lifestyle all along the way.
Where's an area that you don't keep up with the Joneses? That you've done a good job of stopping that.
I drive a 2015 Hyundai Sonata. It looks cool, but it's a Hyundai Sonata. Like it was affordable. It's paid off. We don't have a car payment on it. Now look, my wife drives she drives the full-size SUV to take the kids around but I don't need, she's constantly, and this is a battle even within our own family. She's like, you should get a nicer car. And I'm like, I don't need a nicer car. Like I'm fine. It gets me to A to B. Like it does the job for me. Can we afford a nicer car? Yes.
Right.
Do my friends have nicer cars? Yes. Do I care? No, not for that particular thing. Like it does the job for me. And so I've been able to stay out of that portion of keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah. I think you've made it really clear, Bob, that what we do is maybe we're making $50,000 a year and we're living on a $50,000 a year income. Imagine if we lived on a $50,000 a year income when we made $100,000.
Yeah.
Right? No, what do? We immediately start living on a $100,000 a year income lifestyle. You've got to take 70% of what your income is and say, that's the cap for where I live. I live like someone who makes 70% of what I actually make. $100,000, you only make $70,000. That way you're living, as you said, below your means and you do have some funds to be able to do something with.
Yeah. Look, we still account for fun. I like there's just little things, even like, the friends that you keep tend to perpetuate that life, right? Like when I was in my 20s, my buddies didn't call me and ask me to go golfing at golf courses that cost $200 to golf at, right? Like they couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford it. We weren't doing that.
You played at the public course or you snuck in where somebody wasn't looking.
Yeah, right? Today, it's not uncommon to get a call during the week where my buddy's like, dude, we're going out to Chambers Bay this weekend.
Like,
do you want to? Yeah, it's $200, okay. It's so these things are, I have to make decisions sometimes. I'm like, I'd love to do that. I can afford to do that.
Was it in your budget though, Bob, is the question.
It's not in my budget. It's not like, I have a fun budget, but to me, I'm going to go to the $40 golf course because the reality is my golf game should be on a $40 golf course, right? But
mine's on a windmill, a clown nose. That's my golf game.
We don't need to always be keeping up with the Joneses. Chad, do you struggle in this department? You guys have places where you feel like maybe you upgrade and you know that you'd feel a little guilty about doing it? Or do you have places where you're really good at this and you've been able to not be that?
I used to. Like, keeping up with the Joneses was the have to, right? Like, I remember buying a house that was way bigger and way more expensive than I needed, yet I had to keep up with the Joneses, and I had to have a loan on it that was a really crappy loan
in order to even afford that
to afford it. And that ended up forcing me into the financial situation when 08 came around and everything, went upside down and went kaboom. Nowadays, I don't know that I have that as much anymore. I think part of it, Bob, honestly, is you just brought up a big thing. It's your friends that you're spending your time with. Nita and I don't do a lot of things and hang out with a lot of people that are spending a lot of money. It doesn't cost me anything to go for a run.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't cost me anything to do my workout and stuff. Now, are there areas, I had to have a Peloton, right? I mean, I guess in that area, it's like I could have just bought a regular bike and worked, but no, everybody was getting the Peloton, so I had to go get myself one to play along in that area. I don't think on a regular basis we have anything, but I think, yeah, there are probably certain things. My car was beat up until we waited till my car was saying, no, I'm not going from point A to point B before we bought a new car. And now we will run this one until it says I don't go to point B. So like you, we've been in a position where we've been able to avoid that one. But my teens, my 20s, even my early 30s, absolutely. I was chasing to stay ahead of the Joneses.
Yeah. All right. Next up, so I don't remember on the podcast if we actually had Mike's interview on, or if I know we had Mike Mikhailovic in Bellingham live for one of our live WinMate Give events, but
season 1, Bob, we did have Mike on early in season 1. I'll even tell you what episode it was. If you give me a second, it was episode 9 of season 1.
Okay. So Mike wrote a book called Profit First, and the concept of that book is that in your budgeting process, that you're actually budgeting for the profit that or in this case, the savings, right? The money that we're going to invest. And a lot of times what will happen is we'll budget and we'll maybe budget down to like savings, right? We got some savings here, but we don't actually budget for investment. And the concept in Profit First is this idea that into your budget, you write in the desired amount of profit, right? Or the desired amount of savings or the desired amount of investment, that we want to come out of the budget, so that we actually have money designed to be invested.
Yeah, we covered this with Ben, and I can't wait to go deeper into this. And it's the buckets of wealth, as we referred to them, where Ben talks about, look, you make $1,000 in savings, $1,000 extra profit, whatever that word is you want to use. Do you have a system for where that money goes, right? 50% automatically goes into reserves, 20% goes into investment, 10% goes into giving opportunity, whatever that is. Are you breaking that money down and having a plan for that in your budget? Do you have the buckets set up?
This is basically how you get to that idea of living below your means, right? Which is like the budget's there. I know I've got $100,000 that I bring in a year. I'm going to decide to spend X amount of it. That's the budget. What am I going to do with the rest of that, right? Some of it's going to, and Ben has his buckets of wealth discussion, and we've covered that in an episode at pretty good depth.
Yep.
But it's another reason, like we're not actually accounting in the budget for that investment money.
Okay, so Bob, the next one here, there's a very well-known, I can say Ramsey's name, I guess. There's Dave Ramsey out there, right? And he has, what he always teaches is the snowball effect, right? Pay off the lowest balance you have for debt, then the next, and put all the money, and then it gets bigger and bigger till you're down to one bill. Might not actually be the best way to get out of living paycheck to paycheck. What do you think that might be, Bob?
Look, this one speaks to me, Chad, because I was one of these people that, like, at a time when I lived with a lot of credit card debt, I would always like let's say I had, $5,000 in the bank and $5,000 of credit card debt, I would never put any of that money towards the credit card debt because in my head, I needed the $5,000 there for whatever reason.
So that you didn't have to keep using the credit card.
Yeah. But the reality was just every month, the interest just stacked up on that thing. And I didn't even really realize how much money was going to the interest when I could have just taken the $5,000 and paid that credit card off. And then if I needed the cash, if I had the empty credit card, but I spent like basically my entire 20s carrying a credit card balance when I had the money. Like the average, and look, the averages are weird because in America, you've got a lot of people on the real high side that really yank the averages up. But the average family in the United States has $73,000 in savings, but they're sitting on $6,000 of credit card debt. Like every single—
Wait a minute. They have 10 times the amount in savings as they do in credit card debt, the average. And they still sit on the credit card debt.
The debt sits there, right? We don't pay it off. And it's this, what's the, I think it was, maybe it was Hawking or maybe it was Einstein, right? Einstein said, interest is the eighth wonder of the world. Right.
Compound interest.
Yeah, compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And you're either paying it or you're receiving it. And in this case, when we have high interest debt, we're paying it, right? And when you're paying high interest debt, it's really hard to save.
So Bob, let me ask, if I'm the kind of person out there, if I'm listening to this and I have some debt, not a lot, I have some debt and I have the money to pay for it, the advice from behind your microphone here is pay that dang thing off because you're paying more in interest than you're making in interest.
Yeah.
Get it down to zero.
Yeah.
What if I have multiple pieces of debt? Are you going to tell me I should snowball it and get rid of this?
I'm not Dave Ramsey. I don't.
Or are you going to say pay off the highest percentage and get rid of it because some of that debt is so high on the interest rate?
The approach I took, Chad, when I was clearing my credit card debt up was to pay the highest debt. I even at one point, I would do things, as I was really trying to get out of debt, I would, open a new credit card, which had no interest for a little while. And I'd move a balance over to that thing so that I had, now I had 6 months of breathing room on this where I could just start paying it down, but it wasn't collecting 23% or whatever the crazy interest rate was.
Was that borrowing from Peter to pay Paul or something like that?
Yeah, but it was, just give me a little bit of breathing room to not have this massive
as long
interest.
as you paid it off.
Right. And that was the plan. And into the budget went the $200 every month that was going to go towards that credit card. And now I had 9 months at no interest to pay it.
Yep.
So look, it's just, I don't know, more than anything, this is this was me speaking to 25-year-old me. Like, you moron, you had $5,000 in credit card debt and you had $5,000 in the bank. Like, at least pay off some of it.
Yeah, I get it.
Right? I would just sit on that cash for whatever reason. I believed that was better in an emergency, and it wasn't.
Yeah, and if you really want to be sad, go look at an amortization schedule for a mortgage and realize how much interest you're paying on some of this stuff over the course. You pay almost twice as much for your own home based on your loan by the time you're all said and done by not paying it. All right, Bob, give me one more. Take us out of here on helping people.
Look, I have a great family, amazing friends around me, and I'd like to think that had something, traumatic happen to me in my 20s that prevented me from working, I wouldn't have ended up homeless. But the reality is, when you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're like one accident, you're 1 week of being sick, you're one mistake out on a crazy night in your 20s and you end up in jail and now you can't show up to work the next day. Like, you're any of these one little things away from either needing to stay with a friend or family or being homeless. And it's because we don't have reserves, right? We end up living paycheck to paycheck. We get a little bit ahead, right? And then something unexpected happens. Yep. So Bankrate.com in January of this year found that 56% of Americans can't cover an unexpected expense of $1,000.
That's amazing. That's amazing that they don't have the emergency fund of $1,000 just in case.
It's because we don't expect there to be an unexpected expense. That's why it's called that, right? We expect that next month we're going to make the same amount of money and we've got the similar number of bills that are going to come in. And
that's like saying you don't think there's going to be traffic. Just because there isn't every day, traffic's coming when someone's going to have an accident, something's going to happen and there's going to be traffic. You've got to be ready for this, Bob.
Yeah, look, in our society, I think there's a tax for being poor. And one of those is this idea of unexpected expenses, because it's like I'm poor, then I have an unexpected expense, then I can't pay for it. So I got to dip into my credit card. So there's a tax on that, which is the interest on the credit cards to cover that expense. Look, the buckets of wealth, Ben talks about this concept of reserves, right? Of having, some number of months, and based on your level of risk, Chad, that might be, 3 months of reserves, or it might be 6 months.
Not in our house.
Of reserves.
It's 12.
12 months of reserves, right?
Yeah.
Chad realizes that something could happen and it might take us 12 months.
Oh, no, it's not me. Bob, I'd have 2 months because I would just trust myself that I could absolutely recover and get over it. It's Nita. She's made sure we have 12 months of reserves ready to go. What do you guys have around your house? Because I know Aaron and Nita are very similar.
Well, we keep 4 months of reserves because I'm a little bit more aggressive.
There you go.
But, look, most of my life I lived right on the edge of like something bad could happen and we could be in this spot. And look, all of this boils down, I think, Chad, and I think you have a similar story here, is like, look, sometimes it's because we met the right person. That tends to be part of my story, right? Is I met my wife who was just more fiscally responsible than I am.
Yep.
But at some point, the way that we get out of this is we start by deciding we want to. Right? Like we start by, because look, if you just live and just show up, what does Ben say? Something like your money will manage you if you don't manage your money, right? We just show up and we make enough money and we spend it all that month. And sometimes we don't even know how much we spent. We spend a little on the credit card, and you have to make a decision that you want to stop living paycheck to paycheck. And we make decent money. It's a fortunate position to be in to say like, you can make this decision, but like we could all live on just a little bit less than we do, likely. Right? Wow. Most of our listeners here, you just have to make that decision to get started. And for a lot of that would mean a budget. That would be the first step.
All right. So everybody out there that's listening, let me ask you, are you ready for a change? Or do you want to become someone who would be described as insane? Right? Insanity, the definition is doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different result.
Yeah.
If you're one of those people trapped in the loop of paycheck to paycheck, take one of the points. Yes, a budget. Yes, pay yourself first. Yes, start building up a reserve account for the next unexpected. Yes, pay down the high credit card, whatever it is. Take a lesson from today and help yourself break the cycle that you are in so that you can teach other people how to do the same. Here at Win, Make, Give in Season 3, we are focused on making a difference, making an impact, and making more money.
And go listen to D-Lo beatbox on YouTube. It's
because
unbelievable.
That will make a difference in your life. We hope this episode made a difference as well. Until our next episode, as always, do good.